Hello and welcome to UFO Disclosure Now. This is the podcast where we discuss UFO related topics and the UFO issue itself. I guess the big issue is disclosure. When is it going to happen? Why hasn't it happened? What can we do to bring it about? I think this is really the core of everything to do with this topic. We can talk about various aspects of UFO related topics and associated issues, but the big question we're all wanting to know the answer to is, when will there be disclosure and why isn't it happening? Well, obviously we want to call for disclosure, but what is disclosure? What would it look like? How will it happen? And I guess this is a very, very difficult and complicated subject, and there are many reasons why it should happen and why it won't happen and why it may happen, and I'm going to throw out a few ideas here and perhaps see what you think about it. So what does disclosure look like? What does it actually mean? What do we want when we use the phrase disclosure? Do we want the government to come clean and admit to everything that it has, to all the technology, to crash retrieval? Do we want the government or the private industries to let us see what they have, for them to come forward, to disclose all the research and technology? Do we want to effectively have them show us the bodies? I mean, what is it that we're asking for? So I guess disclosure falls into various categories. Does the government have technology? Do private corporations have craft? Has there been crash retrieval taking place over many decades, perhaps since the 1930s, maybe even before that? So what is disclosure then? What are we looking for? It's a very difficult issue, and it's very complicated, and it's a simple phrase, but it's probably the most complicated question that we could possibly ask. What is it that we're looking for then? Have there been crash retrievals? Does the government hold technology? Has there been reverse engineering going on for decades? That's a possibility. Are we dealing with human technology? Is there in effect a human earthbound breakaway civilization? I think this is a possibility that we have to consider very seriously, and I think that my opinion has perhaps shifted on this over the last few years. The more I think about this, the more I've come to believe that human technology, human craft, human created technology is a big part of this subject. And I think that it's very, very possible, and I think it's worth very serious consideration to believe that over the last 70 or 80 years, trillions of dollars have been poured into research. This research has been carved out into black projects, unacknowledged projects, and within these projects incredible progress has been made. Now that progress has been shielded and withheld from the public and congressional scrutiny, and I think you can even create a reasoned argument as to why this might happen. I mean, consider you are in possession of a technology that is potentially earth-shattering. It would change humanity. Imagine you have a technology that removes the need for fossil fuels, for example. Let's say cold fusion or zero-point energy is a reality, and it was discovered and perfected in the 1950s, 60s. What do you do with it? You have the technology that has the power to reshape humanity. But it can also be used in a militaristic way to create weapons with power and devastation that we can only imagine. I mean, you know, we nuclear weapons, we all know they exist, and then we all have an idea as to the devastation and the destructive capacity that these weapons have. We could be talking about potential weaponry on a whole new scale. Something that makes nuclear weapons, even a hydrogen bomb, look like a firecracker. So if you have that technology in your possession, I think there would be a very good case to want to keep it very, very secret. You do not want such weaponry falling into the hands of adversaries, of terrorist organisations, into the hands of rogue states or rogue nations. So I can well understand, and indeed I would expect my government to keep such information and technology a very closely guarded secret. So this is giving a benefit of the doubt. So I'm a commander or head of a black project. This technology is a reality, and there's a very real need to keep it secret. But the technology is there, it's created. Not only is it created, it's improved, it's developed. Trillions of dollars are poured into it. The technology advances, and it advances throughout the decades to a point whereby we now have a very real situation where a de facto breakaway technology, breakaway civilization is in possession of technologies that we can only imagine. Perhaps the ability to use zero-point energy, perhaps the ability to bring into effect cold fusion. Now there is a belief which is I think very credible that anti-gravitic electrogravitics were studied intensely in the 40s and 50s, and there is a belief, I think if you were to follow the works of Dr. Greer, Dr. Greer would say that he even has the date at which time this technology was mastered, and that is October of 1954. Now that's quite a widely held belief. So let's say now you have technology that involves zero-point energy, that has cold fusion, that has electrogravitics. This could very well be technology that could destabilize the status quo of the world order as we know it. Overnight, industries would become effectively irrelevant. Oil, coal, gas, electrical generation, power generation, national grids, the auto industry, transport, power generation. It would be epoch changing. It would be revolutionary beyond our imagination. So those who had control and access decided that humanity, that we were not ready for this, that the status quo and the maintaining of the status quo was more important than the release of the truth, of the reality. Now you can argue that back and forth. I think that there were perhaps well-meaning people who had a very real and genuine belief that they were doing the right thing. But it's gone too far. I think that we're now in a position that it's simply gone too far. We are living in a 100-year-old technologically destabilized, unreal world. We are relying on technologies from the 19th and early 20th century. I mean, we're effectively creating nuclear power stations that heat up water, produce steam, and spin a turbine to generate electricity. I mean, effectively, we're using steam engines, because that's what it is at the end of the day, steam engines to power our world. and they may very well be, and I believe that there are technologies that are a whole order of magnitude, many orders of magnitude above this. So when we ask for disclosure, what are we talking about? Are we talking about the alien reality, or are we talking about an effective breakaway civilization? Or is it both? And I think that perhaps there are elements of both that are intertwined, that are bound together in this whole conundrum. I think when I think about UAP, UFOs, however you want to refer to the phenomenon, I do believe that perhaps 90%, 95% of what is seen and reported as a UAP, a UFO encounter, is man-made, is part of this breakaway technological civilization. It's man-made. But perhaps the seed, the inspiration, was as a result of a crash retrieval and a reverse engineering. So I do think that there is an intertwining. I think that the two aspects are bound together. So from my perspective, when we say we want disclosure, it's not just about the technology, it's not just about the reality of where human development of technologies has actually taken us to, about the anti-gravitics, about the 0-point energy. What it is there is an alien reality, and I think that is what disclosure really is. Well, will it happen? And why hasn't disclosure happened? Well, I think the reality of what we're dealing with is, as I said earlier, initially there was a very good reason to keep such power secret. What is it? How can we control it? We don't want it to get into the wrong hands. But after 70 years of using public money, I think the public has the right to know what it is that they've been spending their money on. It's taxpayers' money. And I think that what began as a real concern has now become an effectively illegal, corrupt, breakaway technological civilization, for want of a better word. You cannot take taxpayers' money. You cannot take the money that belongs to the citizens of the United States, and I'm sure this is going on in other countries, the money from taxpayers, and deny them access. At the very least, in a democratic system, we expect there to be a degree of oversight. Now, I guess the United States is the epicenter of all things UFO, UAP, so we'll discuss the United States. If you use taxpayers' money, then there needs to be oversight. Oversight is conducted by duly elected representatives, i.e. Congress or Senate. When the Congress or Senate is denied access, or is not even aware such programs exist, but nevertheless they are soaking up billions, if not trillions, of taxpayer dollars, then we now have a situation where there is a criminal and a criminality that's being undertaken. And I think what's happened now is that those involved have effectively gone so far down the path that there has been so much of the obfuscation and hiding and misrepresenting of where taxpayers' money is going, that the people in charge and involved are now actually worried that they will face criminal retribution. And I think that's part of it, is that this disclosure, it's become more than just an issue of are we ready for the technology. the problem we have now is that those who hold the technology are now effectively scared for their own liberty. They're scared for their own freedom, perhaps, because I'm sure that were this to come out, and were the truth and the scale of it to come out, that the public would demand answers. They would look for heads to roll. They would be, oh yes, obviously, an amazement at the technology that's been developed, but why weren't we told about it? What have we been doing with our money? Who was overseeing this? And I think there will be demands for heads to roll. And you have to look at it from a corporate point of view. Imagine the difficulties that would arise. You know, that it may well be that certain technologies have been seeded into certain corporations. Those corporations have leapt ahead in their development and their research. They've effectively had an unfair advantage over other companies and corporations, and other corporations, when they find out, quite rightly, will be very miffed that their competitors have had an unfair advantage, and there'll no doubt be legal action, the scale of which we haven't seen before. So again, the scale of the problem, the legal ramifications, the effect on stock markets, the prosecutions, the criminality, the misuse of public funds, these are reasons that are causing this whole subject to be suppressed. So, it's not just about the technology, and it needs to be kept under wraps for legitimate reasons. It's about people are running scared, and it's just, quite simply, it's just got too big. It's got too big. So will disclosure happen? I find it for the reasons that I've just outlined. I find it problematical to see that genuine disclosure is going to happen. I think it's an inevitability that it will leak out. I think the whistleblowers will come forward, and I do think that were you to look at where we are in 2025, disclosure has happened. 2017, the New York Times published the famous article by Leslie Kean, in which the United States military, the Pentagon, admitted that yes, there are UAP, there are objects entering our atmosphere, and many of them can be identified and accounted for, but there are a category, an amount, a percentage that they don't know what they are, and they can't account for them, and that they are real. So if that's not disclosure, I don't know what is. I mean, they've effectively, right there and then, they've effectively said UAP are real, we don't know what they are, they're entering our atmosphere. That's disclosure of a sort. I mean, that is an admission that the phenomenon is real. So, will disclosure happen? I don't know. I think humanity deserves the truth. I think we are living in an era where the ability to solve many of the world's problems, it exists. Clean power generation, unlimited power, effectively free energy. We could change the world. It could be done. Yes, it will be disruptive, but you think back to the introduction of the internal combustion engine. It revolutionized transport. We had to move from effectively horse and cart to an internal combustion engine. I mean, that transition happened within a couple of decades, effectively. I mean, we went from carriages to motor vehicles, and that transition was a huge fundamental. It was a paradigm shift. But we got through it. I mean, these things happen, and I think that this revolution is going to be on a bigger scale than that. But I think that it wouldn't happen overnight. but I think that we deserve to be told the truth. But, and here's a thought, why is it that we're not being told the truth of the matter? Why is it that disclosure won't happen? We're assuming throughout a conversation such as the one we've just had here, we're assuming that we're calling the shots. We're assuming that the disclosure or not to disclose is in the hands of Congress, President, United Nations, effectively in the hands of humanity, and that it's humans in leadership positions that are holding back the information, and that they could choose to disclose. Well, maybe that's not the case. Is it possible that there is a non-human aspect to this? And I think if we accept the fact that crash retrievals have occurred, and I think the evidence is there, I think there's a huge amount of evidence which we'll talk about in future episodes. The NHI, the non-human intelligences, may very well have an agenda, and quite what that agenda is really only speculation on my part. There may be those in positions of power and authority that genuinely know what the NHI agenda is, and it may be that they're the ones that are calling the shots. It may be that they don't want disclosure. It may be that the status quo suits them and suits their purpose. So when we call for disclosure, that isn't in the hands of our presidents and our leaders. It may very well be in the hands of the NHI, and quite what their agenda is, we can only speculate. Maybe there's a dark side to this. Maybe it's a case of not all NHI or effectively our cosmic space brothers. Maybe there is a possibility that the NHI are here for nefarious purposes. It may be that if disclosure occurred and humanity was awakened to the truth, that the humans, that the populace would demand answers, would demand action, and that this would not suit the agenda of the others. And whatever it is, whatever their agenda is, it may be that they are calling the shots and are effectively instructing those in power, those who have the knowledge, those in the breakaway civilization and secret unacknowledged special access projects. It may be that, yes, they allow those people to develop their technology, but the conditions are there is to be no disclosure to the general population, because whatever their agenda is requires a level of ignorance from the general populace, and that's really open to speculation. And I think that again is part of it. I think it perhaps, all of these threads weave together, all of these aspects are all part of the same truth. It is not just one simple question with one simple answer. It is not just, we want to know the truth, we want disclosure, give it to us, there you go, it's done. I think there are many, many aspects, and I'm sure there are aspects that I haven't thought about or conceived of or considered, but it truly is a very complex question. So, to sum up, will there be disclosure? I guess I don't know. But I do believe that technologies will be leaked, and I do believe that whistleblowers will come forward, and I think that there is an inevitability to a degree of disclosure. I think that there are factions within the clandestine world that want openness, but I think that there are powerful factions that are resisting. So I think there is an ongoing conflict between various power bodies, power brokers, and that this struggle is going on. But I think, yes, ultimately it will come out, and technologies will slowly emerge. Whistleblowers will come forward, and I think for those of us who look into this subject and are interested, and I've done some research, I think for us, disclosure has happened. We know the truth of what is happening on a certain level, but we don't know the detail. But disclosure has happened for us. But for the general population, for the 99% who really don't take too much of an interest or any interest at all, I think they are basically the ones that are having the truth withheld from them. So anyway, I thought I'd discuss this topic. It really is the core of the subject. It really is the essence of what we need to talk about, and I'm sorry we didn't actually come to any conclusion here, but that's what makes this topic so interesting and so fascinating. I hope you've enjoyed spending the last 20 minutes or so with me. I hope you found something of what I said to be interesting. Please do like this video, and please, if you would be so kind, subscribe. I'm trying to get this podcast, get this channel off the ground. I will be doing other broadcasts and other podcasts and posts in the coming weeks, and thank you very much for giving me your time. I do hope you'll look back and view future podcasts, and I thank you again for spending some of your valuable time and giving me some of your attention. Thank you and goodbye.